So our second guest speaker, well, I'll start with a very short story. One of the first jobs I ever had working in the environmental movement was at this small scrapping organization based in San Francisco called Rainforest Action Network.
Yeah.
So they're well known in North Carolina because they've done some amazing work for the past few years fighting Bank of America and trying to curtail their investments in coal and other climate-destroying industries, and doing a lot of work supporting the coal movement that I'm sure many of you have been a part of, fighting Duke and Progress and others. So one of the first people I worked with at RAN was this really amazing, charismatic guy who started leading a really phenomenal campaign on forest issues, going after Home Depot. And he since went on to lead Rainforest Action Network to be this small scrapping organization taking on some of the biggest corporations on Wall Street and really doing some phenomenal pioneering work on targeting corporations and doing corporate campaigns. He's since left Rainforest Action Network, which was very sad for them, but he's since taken the helm of a very not scrappy environmental organization and now heads up the Sierra Club, where he's been doing tremendous work building that organization from its already incredible roots to being one of the leaders taking on the coal industry around the country, stopping dozens and dozens and upwards of hundreds of coal plants around this country with just victory after victory, and being one of the most, I think, inspiring leaders that our movement has. So with that, I would love to introduce Michael Brune.
Hi, everyone. Yes or no? Do you believe in clean energy?
Yes. Yes.
Do you believe in our movement?
Yes.
And do you believe that together, all of us, we are greater than fossil fuels?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, you do. So, I'm Michael Brune, Executive Director of the Sierra Club, and I want to actually just tell you two quick stories that are really important to me. One is the fact that I grew up on the New Jersey shore. I grew up in a tiny town called Chadwick Beach, New Jersey, which is about... That's the second time that someone has clapped for Chadwick Beach, New Jersey. First time it's my brother. So Chadwick Beach, New Jersey is about 4 blocks long. It's on a barrier island in New Jersey, the central coast of New Jersey. And I grew up there in a house that my dad built before I was born in 1965 on the bay side of a pretty thin barrier island. And it was a place that was directly in the path of the storm, Hurricane Sandy, that just passed by a few weeks ago. And the day that the storm hit, my parents were out in San Francisco, staying with my wife and I, visiting their new granddaughter. And so for the first 10 days after the storm, while people in New Jersey were without power, without water, without heat, it wasn't such a bad experience for my parents because they were out in California, it was sunny, it was 75 degrees, and they had this cute little girl that they could play with every day. And after the election, they flew back home. They did vote by absence ballot. And since then, they've been staying with my uncle in the northern part of New Jersey. And yesterday, for the first time, they were allowed to go back to their house where I grew up. And I was able to go with them. And so we got up at 5 o'clock in the morning. There was already a line of people, of cars more than a mile long, people waiting to get back into the area. Most of the people throughout this area on the barrier island in New Jersey haven't been back since the storm hit. Some were able to go back for about an hour just to collect some winter things, but then the police escorted them out. And so we went back, and I wanted to tell you this story because it's like nothing I've ever seen. I think a lot of us, we see disasters happening on television, whether it was Hurricane Katrina or a storm that hits the Dominican Republic or all the tragedies that people are suffering through in Haiti. And until you see something for the first time and you see it live, it's really hard to feel in your gut what actually is happening. So as you're driving down this road, which it's an area very similar to barrier islands in North Carolina, very thin island, house after house after house, street after street, completely destroyed. Roofs caved in, waves you could tell just swept straight through the house. Every house, or at least 8 out of 10 houses along the beach are completely destroyed on the beach side. And every house on the bay side where my parents were has been completely flooded. So we went in yesterday, we gutted the entire first floor, ripped up the rugs, ripped up the floorboards, took out all the furniture, all the appliances were ruined, all the upholstery, every lampshade. It smelled like Katrina. Had mold growing everywhere, in the drywall and the insulation. I have old pictures from my family covered with mold, letters that my father wrote before my parents got married. Completely ruined. And all of this storm, would not have been possible. The intensity would not have been possible in a time without climate change. We've seen, last year we saw 11 storms that created more than $1 billion worth of damage. 14 storms that created more than $1 billion worth of damage. In 2012 alone, we've seen record wildfires in Nevada, in Arizona, in Colorado, in California, down in Texas. There are more than 1,500 counties across the country that have been called disaster areas because of climate change. All of this is due to 1.4 degrees of warming so far, Fahrenheit, 1.4 degrees Fahrenheit. And if you saw the news from 2 weeks ago, most scientists are now coalescing around a consensus that we could see as much as 8 degrees of Fahrenheit in this century. So take what we're already seeing, double it, and then triple it. And that's what we're facing. So we've heard for years now from Vice President Gore, from Bill McKibben for a couple decades about the tipping point that we're approaching on climate change. And it's getting closer because we're seeing feedback loops that build on each other. But there's a tipping point that's more powerful than that. That isn't approaching, it's already here. It's already here. And it's all of us. So the second story I want to tell you is about how our movement is more powerful than you might think. From where I sit, the story that we tell is about what Matt was talking about before, the growth of this movement on coal. Back in 2001, the previous administration put forward a proposal to build 150 new coal-fired power plants all across the country. Utilities then decided to build several dozen more on top of that. So at one point, there were more than 200 new coal-fired power plants proposed to be built in almost every state all across the country. So the Sierra Club, largest national environmental organization, we decided to take this on by targeting those 200. And we had 2 volunteers, one based in Kentucky, one based in Illinois, and 1 staff person. And so in Illinois, the staff person and the volunteer had never pulled a coal permit before, they never took on a coal plant before, but they knew they didn't want a coal plant in their backyard. So they organized, they built a coalition, they got students together with scientists and teachers and local community folks who didn't want a coal plant in their backyard. And they defeated the coal plant. They then worked down in Kentucky, in the heart of coal country, and did the same thing. They built a local movement in that city against that coal plant. And they won. They defeated that coal plant. They then built a regional coalition across the Midwest and took on 24 coal plants. They built coalitions in Minnesota, in Wisconsin, in Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, and they defeated almost every one of those coal plants. We then knitted together a movement of hundreds of organizations. Small community organizations made up of 3, 4, 5 volunteers, large national organizations like the Sierra Club, Rainforest Action Network, Earth Justice, hundreds of organizations all across the country. We defeated coal plants in Florida with the help of Governor Charlie Crist. We defeated coal plants in Texas without the help of Governor Rick Perry. proposed coal plants in North Carolina, California, and to date, so far, we've defeated 170 of those proposed coal plants. It only stopped things from getting worse. So a couple years ago, we began to focus on the existing fleet of coal plants already built in the U.S. Some of the oldest, the biggest, the dirtiest, the ugliest coal plants in the U.S. And we've identified them, we put them on a list of coal plants that should be retired and replaced with clean energy. We've scheduled for retirement the Boardman coal plant in Portland, Oregon, which will soon be replaced by energy efficiency and a whole lot of wind power. The Centralia coal plant, the largest source of greenhouse gas emissions in the state of Washington, will soon be coming down, replaced with clean energy, in particular a whole lot of wind. The Dealey coal plant in San Antonio, Texas, another large source of greenhouse gas emissions in Texas, is coming down and it's being replaced with one of the largest PV solar arrays in the United States. All of this is from grassroots activists. Town after town, state after state, all working together to take on entrenched, powerful fossil fuel interests, and we're winning. So when you add all of that up, we now have 125 existing coal plants that are scheduled for retirement. That's 15% of the existing fleet. In the next couple of years, we'll lock into retirement at least a third of the coal plants in the country, plant after plant, town by town, state by state. When you wrap all of that up, what that means is that we've already capped our greenhouse gas emissions in the U.S. And greenhouse gas emissions are coming down. From 2006 until today, our greenhouse gas emissions have declined by 7.7%. Is that enough? No. Absolutely not. Does this mean we have climate change solved?
No.
Absolutely not. Is it success that we can build upon? Yes. It definitely is. When you add the work that's happening on coal, when you add that to the work that's happening all around the country, where community after community after community are saying no to fracking, and when you add on top of it, and then when you think about the growth of clean energy, you realize that we are powerful. Solar has grown by a factor of 5 in the last 4 years. Wind has doubled in the last 4 years. We now have some states like Iowa and South Dakota that get almost 25% of their power coming from wind. California will soon be at 30% of its power coming from solar and wind. Colorado, same thing. So when you add all of this up together, it shows that, what it really shows that, is that the spell has been broken. The spell has been broken. People now realize we don't need fossil fuels forever into the future. So for every $1 billion that are being proposed for a new coal plant, or a new pipeline, or a new fossil fuel facility, we know that that $1 billion should be invested in clean energy instead.
Yes.
The students at UNC Asheville, the students at UNC Chapel Hill, the students that are working across the state to divest from fossil fuels are building the clean energy reality that we're already living in. They're building on the successes of the victories that we've already had. And so what we need to do as a movement, and is what Bill's going to talk about for the rest of the night, is build on our successes. We are more powerful than fossil fuels. Where we're going to show it, the next place we're going to show it is in Washington, D.C. Right? So I hope you turn your cell phones off, but take them out. Get them out. Get out your calendar. I'll wait. You ready? Let's start turning it on. Keep the sound on. Okay, February 18th. Open up your calendar, make yourself a new appointment. Maybe start on February 17th. We're going to DC.
Sweet.
All of us. Everybody here. tar sands pipeline where we can save the energy instead. We don't need to invest in more dirty oil, the dirtiest oil on the planet, when clean energy will do a better job. So come with us to Washington, D.C. We'll be at the White House. We'll be at Congress. We'll be drawing a line between one and the other and drawing a line in the sand for our clean energy future. We'll be there to show together that we are more powerful than fossil fuels. If we can defeat a coal plant, if we can say no to fracking, if we can say no to dirty oil, we can not only make clean energy future our reality, but we can make clean energy real right here in the present. So February 18th, Washington, D.C. It's going to take a few buses. I'll see you there. Thanks, everybody. And I forgot to introduce by video, here's my good friend, Van Jones.
Hi, I'm Van Jones and I run the Rebuild the Dream campaign. I first met the 350.org crew about 5 years ago. Some of them were still in college, but they were already starting to do grassroots organizing on a scale that the environmental movement hadn't seen for years. I remember the Step It Up campaign in 2007, which organized about 1,400 rallies across America.
Students from Leon High School and FAMU came out Saturday to raise awareness about climate change.
And then in 2009, they took the movement worldwide. They had their first big day of global action, and they organized 5,200 demonstrations in 181 countries. CNN called it the most widespread day of political activity in the planet's history. One thing it showed was something I've been saying for years, that the environmental idea is much bigger and much more diverse than most people knew. Most of the people who 350.org works with are poor, they're black, they're brown, they're Asian, they're young, because that's most of what the world is made up of. Now, as time has gone by, they've hosted the largest work party the planet has ever seen. People in every country in the world, except for North Korea, have come together under the auspices of 350 to put up solar panels, to dig community gardens. They put on the biggest art exhibit in Earth's history.
The Global Earthland Art Project is said to be part of the world's biggest ever art.
People formed a giant image of an eagle this morning.
The artwork displays the number 350, which represents the safe level of greenhouse gas emissions scientists say we need to return to.
Thousands of people with blue tarps came out to show what the river would look like if global warming had a collective part.
As vital as their education role has been in bringing the word of climate change to places where really people weren't paying that much attention. I mean, can you imagine 10,000 young people in the streets in Addis Ababa in Ethiopia? I've also watched the 350.org has matured as a movement.
This will be the largest civil disobedience protest, certainly in the history of the climate movement, and really one of the biggest things of its kind to happen in a very, very long time.
Tomorrow, we're all going to commit nonviolent direct action.
Beyond education, they've been willing to take action, and of a kind, frankly, that nobody else was willing to do.
You are going to be risking the rest. You're going to be lining up on this sidewalk over here.
When they called for people to come to Washington in 2011 to protest the Keystone Pipeline, that pipeline was a done deal. I've been in Washington, I've been in the White House, I'm telling you, it was a done deal. But then the largest civil disobedience action in 30 years in this country changed the outcome.
We stand here right now because we are at our lunchtime moment for the 21st century. President Obama,
They did not come to Washington, D.C. to pull the president down, but they did come to push him to to be who he said he could be and who he said he would be. That is a new kind of environmental movement. It comes from everywhere, it dreams big, it fights hard, it can win, and you are all part of it.